We're also splitting section 5.8 into a few days, but this one's titled Slopes of Parallel and Perpendicular Lines. We've worked a lot with slope now, so now we're going to use it to compare. So let's remember what a parallel line is. They're two lines that never intersect. They run in the same direction, and the important information here is that they have the same slope. So that's something you need to make sure you remember. And that's for parallel lines. The other piece of information is for perpendicular lines. These are two lines that intersect and form four right angles, and they have slopes that are negative reciprocals of each other. So this is the really important piece again, and we're going to talk about negative reciprocals in a minute. So perpendicular lines have slopes that are negative reciprocals of each other, and parallel lines have the same slope. So let's practice finding a negative reciprocal of a number. Remember, the negative means it's opposite in sign. So, and sometimes you'll hear me say opposite reciprocal, but so if a number is positive, we make it negative, and then you take the reciprocal. Remember, if it's a whole number, imagine it being over 1, and then you're just flipping that fraction. So the negative reciprocal of 3 is a negative 1/3. See if you can do these next three on your own, so pause the video. But number 2, we should get a positive 1/4. Number 3 is a negative 4. And number 4 is a positive 3/2. So you notice the signs are all opposites, and the numbers are just flipped. So now let's discuss if the following slopes, let's say we have slopes of lines here, are they parallel, perpendicular, or neither? Remember, parallel, they need to be the same number. Perpendicular, they need to be negative reciprocals. And if it's not either of those, then it's neither. So for number 5, we have the first slope is a half, and the slope of line 2 is also a half. So those lines are parallel. Number 6, the slope of the first line is negative 3, and the slope of line 2 is positive 3. So think about that for a second. They are opposite in sign, but they are not reciprocals. So this is neither. Number 7, we have positive 1/4 and negative 4. So again, we have opposite in sign, and we do have reciprocals. If you imagine 4 being over 1, 1/4, 4/1, those are reciprocals. So this set of lines is perpendicular. Now we're actually going to look at the lines themselves and determine if they're parallel, perpendicular, or neither. And in order to do this, we want to put the lines, the equations, in y equals mx plus b form. Because that's easiest, we know that the slope is the m. So the first two, this first example, both lines are already in slope-intercept form. So the slope of the first line is 2. And the slope of the second line is negative 2. Remember, it's the number in front of the x. So while we do have numbers that are opposite in sign, they are not reciprocals. So that rules out parallel and perpendicular, and we say neither. Again, we are in y equals mx plus b form. So the slope of the first line is negative 3, and the slope of the second line is a positive 1/3. So again, we are opposite in sign, so possibly perpendicular, and they are reciprocals of one another, so we are perpendicular. Here's the first example where we have equations that are in standard form, but we want to put them in slope-intercept form. Excuse me, so slope-intercept form, we need to solve for y. Remember, it's y equals mx plus b. So we want to get the y by itself. And we practiced this a little bit earlier in chapter 5, but we're going to subtract the 4x to the other side. And that gives us 5y equals negative 4x plus 2. Now we need to divide both sides, actually everything, by 5. So we get y equals negative 4/5 x plus 2/5. And we aren't really concerned with the y-intercept. Where we're really focusing on is the slope. We need to do the same thing with the second equation. So we subtract 5x to the other side. And remember, when you're doing this, always write the x term before the number so that it's in true y equals mx plus b form. Now we divide both sides by 4, and that's everything on the left needs to be divided by 4. But we get y equals negative 5/4 x plus 3/4, and again, we're not real concerned with the y-intercept. We just want to know the slope. So here we have numbers that are reciprocals, but they are both negative. So that means they can't be perpendicular. They are neither. If you'd like to pause the video here, try this one on your own. We need to solve these equations so that they are in slope-intercept form. So for number 11, we're going to subtract 3x to the other side. That gives us negative 2y equals negative 3x plus 6. We're going to divide everything by negative 2. This is why it's important to understand that a negative divided by a negative is actually a positive. So we get 3/2 x minus 3. And on the right equation, we subtract 2x. We get 3y equals negative 2x plus 12. Divide by 3. And we get y equals negative 2/3 x plus 4. And again, we're focusing on the slopes. We do have numbers that are opposite in sign, and they are reciprocals, so we're perpendicular. Now we want to just find the slope of the line that's parallel to the given line. So again, we want them in y equals mx plus b form. And the trick here is we want the slope that's parallel, the slope of the line parallel to the line we're given. So first we have to look at the slope of this line. The slope of this line is 1/4. We want the line parallel and it would also have a slope of 1/4 because parallel lines have the same slope. On example 13, we need to solve this equation for y first so that we can figure out what the slope is. Notice if you just look here and you think it's 3/5, that when you solve it for y, it actually becomes a negative 3/5 because you're subtracting that term to the other side. And so you would actually get this one wrong if you just said slope was 3/5. So the slope of this line is negative 3/5. So if we were trying to talk about the lines that are parallel, our slope would also be a negative 3/5. Now conversely, find the slope of the line perpendicular. So again, we need to determine the slope of this line is 2/7, but the line that's perpendicular, and that's the symbol for perpendicular, it's an upside down T, we need to take the negative reciprocal. So the slope of a perpendicular line to this line would be negative 7/2. With 13, again, we need to solve, I don't think I changed the numbers. Nope, I didn't. This should be 14 and 15. But we need to change or solve the equation for y by subtracting 5x to both sides. We get 6y equals negative 5x plus 2. Now we divide by 6, and we get y equals negative 5/6x plus 1/3. This is the slope of the line we were given, and the slope of the line perpendicular then would be again the negative reciprocal. So we need to change the sign to positive and flip the fraction. So we get a positive 6/5. Examples 16 and 17 are similar, and we want to now look at lines whose we're just given 2 points, and we need to determine if they're parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So what do we need to know? We need to know the slope. So that's what we need to do here. We need to find the slopes. So we're going to do two equations for slope. We're going to do line 1, and we're going to do line 2. So for line 1, the slope would be, and I'm just putting the subscript down here so we know we're talking about line 1. Remember, it's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we're going to do -1 minus 1 over 2 minus -2. That gives us -2 over 4, or a -1/2. Make sure that you're reducing and simplifying so that we get the signs right. Now the second line, the slope of line 2, is going to be -2 minus 0 over -1 minus 0. That's going to give us -2 over -1, which is the same as a +2. Now these are the two numbers we're comparing. We have opposite in sign, and we have reciprocals, so these lines are perpendicular. Try this example on your own. I know that we've worked a lot with the slope formula, so find the slopes of each line and then compare them. So we have line 1 and we have line 2. And again, we have x1, y1, x2, y2. So it's -2 minus 5 over 6 minus 0. That's -7 over 6. That doesn't simplify. That's line 1. The slope of line 2 is then -4 minus 3 over 5 minus -1. That's also -7 over 6. So we have the exact same slope with the exact same sign. So these lines are parallel. There were a lot of different types of examples today. Make sure that you understand each different one, as they will all be practiced on worksheet 5A in class.